We are officially recording. Let's rock and roll. And again, feel free to throw questions, comments, etc. into the chat box. Cool. So welcome everyone. My name's Erica. I'm your customer success manager here at Listenwise. So obviously walking you through today's session, but if you have any questions, comments, feedback down the road, feel free to reach out to me. I'm your go-to person for everything Listenwise. And today we're going to be focused on talking about how to use Listenwise for integrated ELD and supporting your English learners. Already talked about this, but the sign in that's in the chat box, throw your number 1 to 5, how familiar you are with Listenwise into the chat box. And I would also love to know in the chat box, throw your biggest challenges in supporting your English learners. What are you thinking about as you begin to prep for this upcoming year? Again, just kind of helpful for me to think about where your head is at. And then hopefully Listenwise can help solve some of those problems. And feel free to just throw those comments in the chat box now, and we can always loop back and discuss them later. But we'll keep moving for now. So in terms of today's agenda and goals, already talked about it, but it's all about how Listenwise can help meet your ELD goals in your classroom, how we align to ELD standards, and then just generally how you can use Listenwise for just easy, engaging listening activity ideas, how to help support students' language and literacy development. And of course, all through the lens of supporting your English learners, but Listenwise can be used for all students, and we'll talk more about that. So by the end of the session, hopefully you have some ideas, maybe some specific ELD standards that you can use with Listenwise, and just think about some strategies, some resources, some routines for the upcoming school year. All right. So for those who are newer to Listenwise, just a high level here, we're all about learning through listening. So we have podcasts and video, thousands of them. Oop, I'm going to put everyone on mute unless someone has a question. I heard a little bit of feedback. Let's do that. But unmute yourself if you do have questions. Not a problem. All right. Listenwise. Okay, so thousands of podcast video lessons in our library. They've all been curated. They're ready for the classroom. They have a bunch of built-in resources and supports, so easy for you to incorporate into your routines. And then we're really focused on ELA, social studies, science. Those are our core content areas. So if you're math or electives, there won't be as much content, but there still could be some ways to use Listenwise if we get a little creative. So if that is you, we can always work one-on-one with that. Cool. I think we're going to do a listen now. So yeah, I'm going to pull up my teacher account here, and we're just going to do a listen to get us started and hear and see what Listenwise is all about. So this is one of our fun, weird news stories. They're quick, they're quirky. They most likely will not directly align to your curriculum, but that's okay. You can still do really great lessons with them, and they're fun and engaging, a great warm-up. And in terms of Listenwise, generally, you'll always stream the audio on the platform, and we have a transcript built in so students can read along as they listen. So I'm just going to push play and let you all enjoy this a fun, well, kind of scary story, depending on where you live. Wild. I don't know if this is a normal occurrence for your area of California, but I live in Massachusetts and I cannot imagine having a bear in my house. But great story nonetheless. And then you saw that transcript highlights the words as they play. So that's just a great support for your English learners in particular, but for any students who need some extra help with comprehension. And then the last thing I'll mention, but we'll circle back on these a lot, built-in resources and support, so making it easy for you. We'll always have at least these comprehension questions built into the platform. So you can do speaking practice, writing practice. The sky really is the limit. And we'll circle back on these questions many times in our hour together. So that is the quick overview fun little listen. And now I'm going to throw it over to you all. So you can unmute or just throw in the chat box just any reactions you had to that story. As a learner, even as a teacher, how was it different? What popped for you? So we'll give you about 30 seconds to write your reflections in the chat box. And I think we had one new person join. Welcome. I'm going to put the worksheet and your district sign-in link there for you. So make sure to get those links. All good. You're welcome. I'll give you a couple more seconds to share in the chat box. It can be just quick thoughts. Engaging the younger generation. Yeah, we got to keep things new and fresh. Cool. And I think part of that engagement is, at least personally, that it's, real people speaking. It's not just a robot. It's not like a read aloud of a text. It is audio format. That is what it's meant to do. So it's an engaging in that interesting and different way. Easier for younger readers. Yeah. Well, and they don't even have to read. That's the beauty of it. If you do have struggling readers, they can listen to content. They'll probably understand the language, but maybe they just have some, decoding issues, etc. So audio can be just another great way to learn as well and get them engaged. There you go. Yeah, listening is fun. It's different. You do a lot of reading every day. So listening, you can close your eyes and still learn. Can't open the worksheet. It should let you make a copy. If it doesn't, don't stress about it. I'll send it to you all after, and you can just kind of like take notes because I'll show you what you need to fill out during the planning time. So no worries about that. Okay, cool. Great. I love the little emojis and thumbs up. Makes it so easy. Amazing. Let's keep moving. Let's talk about kind of some of the science behind Listenwise and the research before we get too deep into today's workshop. Just want to set the scene. Just want to mention, already touched on it. So that's a great segue that I gave there. So listening is the great equalizer. It allows your ELs to access that same content as your native speakers while they're still improving their English language abilities. And speaking of, listening and Listenwise, great way to help students just be exposed to higher level vocab, academic language in that authentic context. And again, when they're listening to that academic language, students can just focus on developing those comprehension strategies without that cognitive load of decoding. So again, just opening students up, giving them more opportunities, and improving comprehension. And obviously want to talk about standards, since this is what we're focusing on today. All of our lessons can be used to address the key Common Core themes baked into the California ELA ELD framework. And there are opportunities to develop students' collaborative, interpretive, and productive language skills and modes of communication as outlined in the California ELD standards. And obviously today we're going to focus on that the most, and we're going to focus on part 1. So the 1 to 12 standards is what we're going to touch on. So we're going to go through each of these sections, and then I'll give you some ideas for how Listenwise can help you meet those specific standards. And then of course, I'll give you time to play around and explore and ask questions. Cool. But before that, so again, I'm not totally sure if everyone has an account yet. So I do just want to pause and either let you all get logged in for the first time or log back in if you have used Listenwise before. So in the chat box, we have what we call our quick start guide. So that has the link to sign up, and there's special codes for your schools. And that's how you get your subscription, your premium access. So essentially, just want you to know we're just going to focus on number 1 today. So just make sure you have your account set up. So you go to Listenwise and create your own teacher account and inputting that premium code when it asks for it. So speaking of premium codes, I have them up on the screen. So I have a timer here for 90 seconds. So we'll just pause, let you get logged in or start the sign up process. And if you have any tech questions or issues, throw them in the chat box and I will help resolve them for you. But again, check out the quick start guide in the chat box if you need to sign up for your account. Ooh, do we have an adult school code? We may not. Let me look. We do not. So go ahead and just use any of the other codes. We just ultimately want you to get access, but I will make note of that. And then, oh, it looks like, okay, I'll get both of you. If there's 2 of you in that school, I'll just make a note and we'll make a code for you all. But you guys don't have to do anything else. Snag another code and we'll be good. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay, cool. Anything else? Doesn't look at anything else so far. No? Okay, we just have 18 seconds left. I know, super quick, but just to get you started. You'll have more planning time to finish whatever sign up you need to do still. Okay, there is the timer. So hopefully you have your account or you're very much on your way to having your Listenwise account. So let's start diving in, talk about those ELD standards, and we'll kick off kind of the meat of the workshop. So overview of Listenwise for those who are newish or maybe need a bit of a refresher after the summer. Just want to remind you, we have 3 general buckets of content. We have current events, which we post throughout the school week. They're paused for the summer, but they will be back, I believe, the 2nd week of August. So it's what's happening in the world. They're really fun, really engaging stories. That's where the weird news story that we listened to about the California Bears, that's part of that collection. And then we have Gen Ed and ELD lessons. These are standards, curriculum aligned. All of them can be used with your English learners, but ELD is really geared towards your more emergent to intermediate to advanced. English learners just have very focused on language and content, but you can use the ELD lessons with the Gen Ed classroom, etc. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit more, but just want you to know that the Gen Ed and ELD lessons have more built-in resources and supports both for you and for students. I'll show you more about that in a couple of minutes. And in terms of assignments or how you engage with students with Listenwise, a lot of teachers just do a whole class listen. The audio is engaging, so you can just do a class discussion or turn in talks, etc. So you can keep it kind of simple with the tech piece, or you can always assign work to students. We either have open-ended written assignments where they're answering questions about the podcast, or we have some auto-graded quizzes, which I'll just shout out their great ELPAC, CASP, SBAC prep. So think about incorporating quizzes into your long-term plan. And we'll talk more about those assignments as we go along. Cool. So let's now dive a little bit deeper into the tools, the resources, how we can support our English learners with Listenwise and get into those standards that we've been talking about. So first of all, you've heard me mention, but just to call it out visually, we're all about multi-domain instruction. So obviously listening is number one. You can't do Listenwise without listening to our podcasts, but you can also tie in reading with the built-in transcripts, the built-in questions, great writing, or speaking practice, again, just depending on how you want to structure your lesson. You definitely can hit all 4 if you want to, though, or you can just focus on a couple. And then putting some more ideas onto each of these language domains, literacy domains, so scaffolding. So thinking about your English learners in your integrated classroom, know that you can share that transcript with those students, remove them from your other students. So providing the different supports they need to help with comprehension. In terms of speaking practice, we have different reflection protocols built in, different questions already built into our lessons. So really easy to facilitate some academic conversations. And we saw those questions built in. So again, great speaking prompts or writing prompts. And then we can also do some writing practice. We have graphic organizers that are built into lessons. So that's great for note-taking and other writing activities. Cool. And then just generally, just so you know, all of our ELD and Gen Ed lessons have standards alignment, and you can find them under the lesson. I will show you where to find that in a moment. And you can also decide to, you want to meet X standard, and then we'll give you a list of lessons that meet that standard. So you can either go to the lesson and then check off the standards it meets, or go from the standard and then find a lesson. So you have both pathways. And again, I'll show you that in a demo in a moment. But before that, let's talk through the different standards, and then we'll give you some ideas for how Listenwise can help with that. So in terms of the collaborative standards for ELD, you're probably familiar with these, but we'll just read through some of them. So number 1, exchanging information and ideas with others through oral collaborative discussions. Number 2, interacting with others in written English in various communicative forms. Number 3, offering and justifying opinions. And then 4, adapting language choices to various contexts. So we can't obviously meet all of these standards directly, but just want to give you some ideas for how Listenwise can help. So you can use the built-in questions on any Listenwise lesson, current event, Gen Ed, ELD lesson to facilitate discussion about that podcast. So that's always an easy one that you can meet. Offering justifying opinions. So you can allow students to share their opinions with those built-in discussion theme questions as a prompt. So again, that's on every Listenwise lesson. And then different ways to facilitate that discussion. You can do, small turn-in talks. It can be small group. It can be whole group. So there's different ways that you can have students interact and discuss with each other to meet these different collaborative standards. But Listenwise is definitely engaging, so it should be easy to get students talking about that content, definitely. Okay, so the next section are the interpretive standards. So really we're most focused on number 5 here, listening actively to spoken English in a range of social and academic contexts. So listening obviously to the podcasts is a great way to check off that standard and meet that standard. And then we have some things about reading closely literary and informational texts and viewing multimedia, evaluating how well writers and speakers use language, etc., and then analyzing how writers and speakers use vocab. So those two, not as easy to meet, but there could be ways if you all want to get creative on how to meet that, but really focused on 5 and 6 here and how to meet number 5. Again, those built-in comprehension questions, they're there to check for understanding, make sure students are actively listening and engaging with that content. And I'll show you, but we have some paired texts and embedded videos and other multimedia resources. So that's another way that you could work to meet standard number 6. All right, and then last but not least, the productive standards. So expressing information and ideas in a formal oral presentation, writing literary informational text to present, describe, and explain ideas and information, justifying own arguments and evaluating others' arguments in writing, and then selecting and applying varied and precise vocab and other language resources to effectively convey ideas. And I should mention, these are just the general standards at the high level. Of course, once you get into your specific grade, etc., these will be slightly different, but these are the overarching themes, of course. And then how Listenwise can help. So students can always use Listenwise lessons for research projects or presentations and cite them. All of Listenwise are nonfiction, real-world audio, so that's definitely something you can use for bigger projects. I mentioned we have graphic organizers, so students can use those to take notes and then help them practice summarizing. And then we've talked about the discussion theme questions. That's a way to help students, give opinions and justify their arguments. But the debate stories, which I'll show you, those are posed as questions. So it's really prime for students to justify their side, give their opinion, and just general argumentative writing practice. Whew, okay, so those are the standards, different ways Listenwise can help. And now I'm going to give you a demo and point out all of those different things that I just mentioned. But if there are questions, etc., do let me know. After I do this demo, I'll give you about 5 minutes to start exploring on your own and getting comfortable with that. So I know it's been a lot of me talking and information dumping, but you'll start absorbing and exploring on your own in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's do that demo. So I've just pulled up this lesson. This is a fabulous lesson, appreciating differences at a place in the table. So I recommend you checking this one out. First, want to scroll down because the meat of the lesson are down here in these different tabs. So number one is the teacher's guide. Just so you know that we have different ways for you to help teach this lesson. So before, during, after, everything's built in here for you. And again, different ways to engage students, the questions to ask, pre-teaching vocab, reflecting on the story. So there's just prompts built into the teacher's guide. But most importantly, let's start with standards. So I mentioned all of our lessons will have the standards listed on the lesson. So you'll see here grade 4, the EL standards, and then you can see for collaborative, emerging, expanding, bridging, we'll list out these specific standards that we meet. So that will be very helpful for you all to see those specific standards. And that is under the teacher's guide. And then under the assignment resources tab, I've talked a lot about the questions, but the comprehension questions, again, great way to check for students' understanding as they're listening. And then these discussion theme questions are great discussion prompts, ways to, give their opinions, defend, justify their opinions. And then also, if we want to bring different media into it, we have different paired texts and articles on the topic. So that can be, again, another way to make it more multimedia and have students compare and contrast as an example. And if we scroll down, just so you know, there will be vocab lists on our lessons, and then we'll have different organizers as well. So they'll be different for each lesson. This doesn't have any specific note-taking one, so not the best example, but obviously you can use your own organizers for any Listenwise activity. Cool. Let's see. Let's pop over. So our gen ed lessons, some of them have an ELD paired lesson. So it's using the same audio, but it has different supports and resources geared towards our lower proficiency level students. So same podcast again, but just some different tools and resources. So just want to point out that there are some videos. So that's great background building. Again, another media source to help students. And it has the same structure though. So you still have your teacher's guide. You still have different activities. And if you keep scrolling, you'll still see your standards alignment. So that's all there. And then same for the assignment resources. Ooh, some of this is in Spanish. I don't know why. I think we have a product bug here. But you see the comprehension questions, you see the vocab, and then the different organizers. So that's what that will look like. And let's see, do I have... In terms of assignments, if you're not familiar with them, I just want to briefly talk about it. So we have our multiple choice quiz. And once your class is set up, pretty easy to just assign to everyone, but just want to show you what that looks like. And we'll go without support. So I talked a lot about, giving the supports, letting students see the transcript, but you can always remove it. So they're just, forced to listen and really work on those listening skills. And then all the questions are here. It's all pre-populated. And again, a great way to check for comprehension. And this is where it's great CASP and ELPAC prep as well, because students, when they submit, they'll instantly see how they did. Cool. And then our other assignment type, let me click out of that back to my lesson. We have written assignment. So these are more open-ended, and you could actually embed an organizer so students are taking notes within their digital Listenwise assignment. They can be answering those comprehension questions, the discussion prompts within the assignment. You can even embed the paired text, etc. So let me actually show you. I think I have a completed example. I don't need to bore you by going step by step through this. But let's click. I have this lesson here in the Hunger Games. So you can see here, I have a link to a video, more about the Hunger Games. We have our transcript built in. We have our vocab. Here's an organizer built in, and then the comprehension question. So if you want it all to be fully digital, you absolutely can do that. But maybe you want, them to fill out the organizer on paper, but maybe answer the questions digitally. You can absolutely do that. So there's the flexibility there. And then the last thing to show you before break is up here in your menu bar, we have this standards tab. So this is where if you just want to, let's see, it takes a second to load. If we just want to look at grade 9 ELD standards for California, it'll be for your state. It's going to take a second, but it will load here. And then you can see a whole list of lessons that will meet those particular standards. It takes a while. It's a lot of thinking. But while we wait for that, are there any questions? I know we're coming up to our first planning time. You probably just want to get in there and start exploring, which I totally get. Oh, it's taking forever. Okay, we'll come back to it. I'll show you later once it loads. Don't want to waste your time. Okay, so if everyone, I'm not sure if we have the worksheet ready to go, but this is the time to make a copy of it and get ready. But in these 5 minutes, really your task is just to explore Listenwise. So, find a lesson that you could use, look at those built-in resources, think about how you can meet specific ELD standards, and just get familiar with the platform. Really, that's the goal in these first 5 minutes. On your worksheet, you can just be jotting down different ways, activities, strategies, tools within the platform that you can use to work on the different literacy skills. And if you want to start thinking about specific ELD standards and how you can use Listenwise to address them, there's a place for you to do that. So really just open planning time, ask questions. I'll start the timer now, but feel free to throw anything in the chat box, unmute yourself. I'll go on mute unless people do have questions. I want to give you time. You're probably sick of listening to me chat over here. So I don't see questions. So I will go on mute. But again, if you need me, I will be here. Okay, we have just about 15 seconds left on this first planning time. You'll get another chunk of planning time in a couple of minutes. I'm sorry about the doc issues. I don't know if other people are having problems, but don't stress about it. You can just see it's more about taking notes, thinking about different ways you can connect Listenwise. So again, no stress. We just want you learning Listenwise. So get in there, start exploring. Okay, want to pause. Anyone want to share which ELD standards they think? Again, I know nothing's written and saying yet, but what do you think would work with Listenwise and which ELD standards they can meet? Different activities you wrote down. What are you thinking? Again, just kind of want to open it up for sharing. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd rather just talk, but you can throw it in the chat box as well. But I will set a 90-second timer here so y'all can just put 1 or 2 quick things in the chat box in the next 90 seconds. But of course, if there are any specific questions, please let me know now as well. I don't see anything in the chat box yet. Maybe you guys are shy. I know it's early. We're the first workshop of the day. So totally fine if you still need to think about things you're not ready to share. There's no pressure. But if people are just confused and don't know where to start, we can also work on that. So don't be shy about speaking up with that either. And we will have more time for questions at the end, I believe. I think I baked in like at least 5 minutes. And I'm realizing now I should have probably listed the ELD standards. You could easily reference them. So that's my bad. I should have had them there. But I'll just again stress the, let's see, under interpretive, the 5th standard, listening actively and asking or answering questions about what was heard. So that I think you can always meet that standard with Listenwise. So thinking about those questions, working on students actively listening, having that transcript, working on the vocab, just making sure they're understanding and actively listening. So that's one standard that I think if you take nothing else away, you can use Listenwise for that standard. Right. Well, we'll keep moving here. Let's see. So lesson plan ideas. Wanted to give you some specific content area suggestions, activities, and then how those can meet specific ELD standards. But first, put up a quote here from Ingrid. She's one of your colleagues. I believe she's at Salinas High School. Maybe she's moved, but that's where she was when we got this quote. So I'll read part of it for you here. So she's been using Listenwise since its rollout last year. Now I think it's been a couple of years. Let's see. She says, as a teacher, the activities help me reinforce the academic behaviors I want my students to consistently use. For example, I use the writing sections to assess students' complete sentence writing. I'm able to review their work on the platform, give them feedback, and when necessary, make correction requests. That's a good point. There is the back and forth, and you can have them make edits. And then she mentions the quizzes, great way to test reading and listening comprehension, depending on how she's rolling out the lesson. And I found that if I want students to actively practice their listening skills, I remove the article. I think she meant the transcript. So again, that's a great tip where if, they're forced to listen when they don't see that built-in transcript, but give it to them to begin, and then you can remove it. So then again, you're really just focusing on listening. But then I think it's interesting. She then says, if you want them to deepen their comprehension and write well-structured responses, then they do see the transcript so that they can refer back as they're doing their activities. So she wraps up saying, I find Listenwise to be a valuable tool for practicing skills. I also find it's easy to assess their writing, which is great. Many benefits to Listenwise. She finds new ways to integrate it into the academic requirements for my instruction. So Ingrid's great. So if you know her or don't know her, she's probably happy to answer any questions that you have. So she's kind of should be a go-to with boots on the ground in your district. Okay, let's talk about ELA, social studies and science lesson activities. So for ELA, Listenwise can be a great way to introduce a new topic, open a new unit, great way to activate prior knowledge and build context for new learning. And I've just have like a really quick snapshot of a before, during, and after. So before listening, you can facilitate a short turn and talk, have students talk about what they know about that topic. During listening, so you can, project to your screen, have them see the transcript, and have students filling out an organizer built into that lesson to take notes, etc. And then after listening, review those comprehension questions, discuss them as a class, and then you can, transition to connecting it to the new unit of study. And then I've thrown here the 2 ELD standards that you can meet with this one, and I'll pull them up. So number 1 is exchanging information and ideas via oral communication and conversations. And then number 5, of course, is listening actively and asking or answering questions about what was heard. So those are the 2 standards you can meet with that type of activity. And of course, you could introduce a new topic in any content area. It's not specific to ELA. Science, here's a slightly different activity here. So you could do an exit ticket with one of our fun current event stories. And this is more geared towards science because our current events have lots of wonderful science-related content. So here again, still listening as a whole class and discussing the comprehension questions together, just again to check for comprehension. And then the activity for students could be to summarize the podcast and then answer one of the discussion theme questions for some type of writing activity. So either again in Listenwise, or you can keep it simple and just have them do it on paper. And then for those standards, it would be standard 5. So again, listening actively and answering or asking questions. And then number 10 is writing literary and informational text. I know that's a high level one, but the idea about summarizing the text. Okay. So that's a different writing focused activity, more of an exit ticket, current events. And then last would be social studies. Debate stories. So I forgot to show you. Let me pull up my account. So under this current event tab, we have our drop down with the different themes. And there's a whole debates section. And these are great because they're all posed as a question. Should teens say who gets to run their school? Should humans colonize Mars? It's a wide range of topics, as you can see. Should teen social media time be limited? I bet that would get your students talking. So then, it's always posed as a question, and then the built-in questions are geared towards, having them answer those questions, giving their opinion, having to justify their answers. So 2 ways you could approach a debate story. You could actually do a debate in class and have a pro and a cons team, have them brainstorm, come up with their, support and their arguments, and then have an in-class debate. Or maybe it's more informal. You just want to do some quick turn and talks, discuss those pros and cons, and then maybe have students complete a debate organizer, which I'll put in the folder that I send out to you. But this, kind of a quick cheat sheet here about having students do the pros and cons and then giving their opinion on what they think the answer is. Or maybe you want them to do a longer, instead of just a quick paragraph on an organizer, you want it to be a couple of paragraphs or maybe a longer paper, part of a research paper. Again, lots of ways you can take that. And then in terms of the ELD standards here, number 3 is offering opinions and negotiating or persuading with others. And then 5, again, of course, is listening actively and asking or answering questions about what is heard. So those are just 3 different ideas using Listenwise, This would be a longer activity if you actually do the class debate, but the exit ticket, that could be a 10, 15-minute activity. So you can customize it depending on your schedule, your students, and your curriculum. And then want to just mention, as we're here all about supporting our English learners, reclassification obviously is number one. And just thinking about ELPAC prep specifically to the listening domain, these are the types of activities and tasks they have to do on the test. And then there's so many ways that using Listenwise just on the daily, not even thinking about test prep, is helping them prep for that test. So again, just listening, having to answer questions, engaging in debates, learning new academic language, using the transcripts, etc. So again, you're always doing ELPAC prep when you're using Listenwise, which is fabulous. But a key piece of that ELPAC prep are those built-in quizzes that I mentioned. And they're also great for the reading tasks on the ELPAC as well, because it's reading text and answering questions. So it's the same idea of having to answer questions about a piece of media. And I already showed you a preview, but there's great data tracking, and you can keep track of your students and their progress throughout the year. And planning time. So before I give you another 5, we could even do maybe 8 minutes, we'll have to see where the clock is. Want to just talk about, again, some kind of high-level ideas, thinking about how you can add Listenwise into your curriculum. So we've talked about these. It's a great background builder, great way to introduce new topics or extend knowledge or reinforce concepts. But generally, it's all about making those real-world connections with our nonfiction audio podcasts. And again, it could be a quick warm-up. It could be an exit ticket. It could be, a fun Friday activity you do, or it could be just fully independent homework, students listening on their own. But we recommend doing the whole class, at least to begin, really maximizing the engagement with that. And then in terms of how often to use, ideally once a week for 15 to 30 minutes. But maybe it's, once a unit. I know schedules are packed. You have a lot on your plates. But just think about trying to add it at least a couple times a month to begin. And then implementation, we've talked a lot about this, but you can do whole class, you can do small group, you can do individual, you can do a combination of all of the above. But start whole class, start without, devices, make it easy, just get students listening, get them engaged. And then always thinking about how you, before, during, and after listening, how you want your lesson to look and what tools and resources you may need. Okay. So we've got 5 minutes here. I think we can do a little bit more. I don't see any questions or comments so far. So in terms of tasks, again, just want you to keep exploring. So maybe you're just favoriting lessons, looking for things you can use. Maybe you're thinking about the ELD standards and how you can use Listenwise to meet those standards. Again, up to you on what makes most sense at this time. If you're ready to really dive in, the bottom half of your training worksheet has a lesson plan outline. So you can choose the lesson, you can, write out which standards it's going to meet, and then you can think about that before, during, and after listening and how you want that lesson to look. So if you're not ready for that now, which fair if you're not, just think about this for the future when you are doing your first Listenwise activity. But I'll just push play. I don't see any questions, but again, feel free to put questions in the chat box if you have them. If there's anything you'd like to see that you haven't seen, or you want to see something again, put that in the chat box and we can definitely cover that after this last planning time. But again, I'll go on mute. But if you need anything, I am here. I see a comment. Adult students, that is fair. Not exactly the same standards. But again, hopefully at least the ideas, the strategies you can still use. So that's good. Amazing. If you have any last comments or questions, there's the timer. That surprised me. So let's see. We're at the end. Any, again, big red flags? I will stay online after the session in case you do have any questions or want to chat one-on-one. But final reflection. We won't do a thing pair share. But in the chat box, just put one thing you're taking away from today's session. Robert already kind of got us started with this one. He read my mind. But everyone else just throw one thing you've learned, one thing you're looking forward to using in your classroom. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. And then we'll wrap up. I'll give you we have a feedback survey that you guys need to fill out. So I'll give you the link for that. Let me find that link. I'll put that in there. Feedback link. Okay, let me put the link in there for you. So this is for your district. So make sure to click that link and fill out the feedback form. And as I mentioned, I will send an email with the recording, the slides, the worksheets, everything we've mentioned. And then you'll have my contact info. So please feel free to reach out if you need more help, support. I know if you're totally new to Listenwise, this may have been a little overwhelming, and we'll do our best to work together to make sure you're not overwhelmed. And again, don't be shy about reaching out about anything. Cool. Ooh, thanks for sharing. Implement more daily use of Listenwise to help students build skills and need to decipher complex text. Amazing. Cool. Yeah, I think having just listening activities that you don't have to pre-record or students don't have to listen to your voice, do read alouds, is definitely a game changer for teachers and students alike. Cool. And yeah, we've come to the end. So I put the feedback link. So make sure to click that and fill that out. And again, I'll reach out probably later this afternoon with my follow-up email with all the goodies. And yeah, if you've done all that you need to do, feel free to hop off. I know you probably have lots more sessions to attend today, so you can take a quick break, stretch break. But thank you everyone for joining. Happy listening. Hope you learned some great new things and you're ready to start using Listenwise come the new year. Thanks, everyone. And I'll stick around if you do have questions. Happy to answer them.